This is the Virtual Business Owners Network on Friday, the 13th of October, where our expert presenter is Nicholas Cloake, and he's going to be talking about brand. Okay, take it away from there, Nick.
Okay, so if we're talking today about how does your brand truly reflect your ambitions for your business. I think a lot of people use the word brand in a cavalier way. You should really think about it as business. When I talk about a brand vision, it's your business vision, brand is just part of it. So I've been doing this for a good while. Next slide, Alec. This is the process I was talking about earlier. So these are the steps that we go through: understanding, strategizing, and execute. I believe the understanding is the most important stage, because without true understanding, you can't actually create a strategy. And that's where the interaction with clients is really important. Next slide, Alec. This is an example of a toolkit, a part of a toolkit, which is a questionnaire, which people actually fill out by hand, which sounds crazy in this digital world. But when people actually commit to writing something, they think about it more deeply than they would by clicking a button. So we do a lot of workshops in person with these questionnaires. During COVID, it was actually quite difficult to create great brand workshops. Anyway, next one. Next slide. So one of the key questions we start a workshop with is, name 3 things that will make your brand or your business great. What are these 3? You may have more, but think of 3 things that are really important to making your business great. And it doesn't, if you leave out the profit side and think of the other things. So, and that actually is as an essential part of your brand as your logo. So that's your first task, and we'll be talking about this briefly next week. Next slide. Brand vision. So brand and business vision are interlinked. So brand vision is a brand's concept of its future. Where's the brand going? What's it want to achieve? What are its values? The definition starts with a company's brand identity and core messaging. So when I talk about brand, I talk about 2 things. I talk about its visual manifestation, because that's what I specialize in, but also its messaging, because the core messaging of your brand is super important in this day and age and needs to be really managed well. Nike make a very clear brand vision. It's to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. Not a question about profit there or money. That's their vision. So do you have a brand vision? Is it worth creating one? Brand purpose. Brand purpose is about why your company exists. Why did you do it? Why did you start it? Apart from earning a living. And, an efficient brand purpose or a good brand purpose is about putting your customer or client first. So another little exercise, think about what your brand purpose should be. Okay, Al, next one. So brand values. Brand values are super important. Every brand has, every business has values. And what we try and do in our workshops is get people to think about these. So we throw out a number of words that will be, reflective of what we feel their business would be. And what's interesting is some of the ones that come back to us. So usually at the workshops, we ask them to choose 3, and they don't always use some of the ones we've suggested. So one of the biggest values that is coming up consistently is flexible. That's a value that's coming up all the time in our brand workshops. And the other is knowledgeable. So every brand has personality. So which, pick 2 of these. So is it mature? I chose Alec because I thought he was the best example of maturity I could think of. Youthful. I was going to put me in, but I thought that was a stretch too far. Assertive, engaging, corporate casual, national, international. So you select 2 of these. So you can't be mature and youthful. You can be internationally mature. You can be engaging and corporate and so on, So that's how you think of these. And brand personality in words: dynamic, contemporary, flexible, innovative, trustworthy, measured, classic, predictable, safe, loyal. Again, pick 2. So if this thing goes into Slack, you'll be able to do this on your own. So your audience, indicate which are the most important, because that will shape your communications plan. So who are the single most important? In a lot of cases, we have clients where regulatory bodies are important, like architectural firms would have the RAI, government would be important to them, and so on. And this is a bit of a kind of cheat exercise, because 95% of people place number 1 as a client, and it's actually not. It's possibly 2 and maybe 3. The most important audience is the internal one, because if you don't get it and the people that work with you don't get it, no one gets it. So your internal audience is the first focus for your brand. Brand positioning: are you top of the range, mid-range, value range? To help you think of this, think of Tesco. You've got Tesco Finest, Tesco Normal, and Tesco Basic. So which one do you want to be? So like, I like to think of myself as being high level expensive, but I'm not. I'm actually mid-range and competitive in terms of my marketplace. So that's your brand positioning. This is a hard one. People always struggle with this question in our workshops. So, and what it's based on is trying to get people to think abstractly about the brand. So these are examples of brand expressions. So obviously, you can tell what they are: Disney, Nike, MasterCard, Amazon. Then the tree is actually a brand myself and Alec did for construction workers pension scheme, and that Red Dog stole for that insurance company. But anyway, the creative, effective, persuasive is my personal tagline. So that's the expression that I use. So think of a single thing that will work with that. Tone of voice. Tone of voice can influence the design of your identity, by the way. So what is most important? There could be 2 of these, like it could be first person and knowledgeable. So for, someone in accountancy, being knowledgeable is really important. Excuse me. Friendly and engaging doesn't really matter. So which is the most relevant to you? Next one out. A tagline. Do you think your identity would benefit from a tagline? Some would, some wouldn't. But think of it as a different task. Think of this as a way of condensing what your business does into 3 or 4 words, because that actually helps you think in an abstract way about your brand as well. So there are some of the questions out of the 24-page, questionnaire. And I've used this for the past decade, if not longer, in terms of developing brands for people. So I thought I'd just quickly show you some examples of these. So next page. So this one's quite important. This is Everos, a tech company. And what I like about this brand is if you look at there's a kind of colored pattern happening on nearly everything in the, like in the side of the van and so on. That's what we call in branding a 5th element. It's a graphic element that's specific to them, but it's not actually part of the logo, but it is part of the brand. And that actually came from a carpet in their boardroom. They had this amazing striped carpet that was featured in the boardroom and strategic places around headquarters. So we picked that as a 5th element. And I wrote the tagline as well. And the tagline came through a second workshop where, the end of the workshop, they said, look, we're just different. We just think differently. We're fresher than everyone out there. So fresh thinking, instead of saying, supplying all sorts of stuff. Or this is for a European digital for business. Again, done with the same process. where it's a web and collateral. So the guidelines, when you create an identity, you need to have guidelines. So every identity I do and do with others has guidelines. But in the case of digital for business, we also put in specific graphics, like the one on the laptop that they could use. We basically set up a series of graphics for their, use going forward. This next one out. Hegarty, Irish people might be familiar with them. One of the oldest firms, in the top 8, I think, in construction in the country. They wanted a brand evolution. So we did a short workshop and really looked at how they did everything. And did this about a year ago, or 18 months ago. We're still applying it to trucks and vans and cranes and things at the moment. And then the last one, Vinnie Byrne, remember Brian, Alec?
I do indeed.
So Vinnie Byrne is a specialist paint company. So you can see their van there. But they have a new product, a couple of years old now, called Color Can. And this was the brand application of the identity. And on the side of the van, we have one of the pictorial things which we use in a variety of ways online and in postering. So where you bring the thing to life, with a guy actually spraying something. But they'll match any color you want on anything, including leather. So it's quite an interesting thing. And then, thank you. So,
all right. Well, listen, thank you. Anybody, any questions they'd like to ask Nick? You can unmute yourselves now.
Fantastic presentation, Nick. Thanks. Loads of questions, but I suppose after I study more and I wrote down everything, but after I really get to study it and write more down, I think a lot of people like myself will have even more questions next week or the week after.
This thing is usually a 3.5 hour process.
Yeah.
So
can I just hold you for a second, guys? I see we have a new person joined us. Amna, can you put your screen on there, please? I don't know. I got a request from somebody new today to come online. So okay, I'm gonna put something in the. If you can't use your screen, please put something in the chat so we know who you are. Then you can introduce yourself.
The other thing, Vincent, is that it's done with a group of people. I know a lot of us here are single owners of our businesses, but you always bring other people that are associated in some way into it to help the thinking. So if I was rebranding Cloake, I'd probably ask my wife, who's a market research expert, to consider some of these questions and what I might do. I said I might consider asking her. I probably wouldn't, because she would just take over the process.
Would you consider asking somebody from your target market to jump in as well?
Absolutely.
And answer questions?
Absolutely. Yeah? I'd even talk to suppliers, key suppliers, because they are your audiences, suppliers, customers and internal.
No, it's really interesting. That there is. It seems to me that this is not just an overnight idea. This is science, probably. That's gone down for years and years to come up with this formula. And the reason why I don't have an actual question, I have millions of them, but I have to really go through it more. After I see the presentation again and I wrote down this full A4. Yeah, but it's nothing compared to what I could if I had a little think about it. So I'll watch it on Slack and I'll come back in maybe a week after I do it. And I know I have at least one very specific question, but now is not the time until I actually go through it a bit more and see it. But great presentation. Cheers.
Thank you.
Can I just make a comment? As an operations specialist, I have to say that I've never seen a branding presentation or sales or marketing presentation that looked at at the internal view before. I think it's super important. Like, so when we're doing our work, we look at, say, customer experience, and all our clients can understand that. But when we want to look at the internal experience of the employees, or the alignment of the management around the vision, people kind of think that's a waste of time, but it's often one of the most, if not the most important elements of what we do. So I'm very surprised to see it here, and it's kind of getting me to think more about branding now. So well done, Nick.
Sean, one of the things we do at workshops is, particularly in Europe, is we write a statement of about 50 to 100 words on a piece of paper, and we get 10 people. And these workshops in Europe usually have 30 or 40 people at them. They're very unwieldy. We'll pick, 8 or 10, usually 8 actually. And we'll take the first person and we'll hand them the piece of paper and say, read that. Okay. We take the paper off them, and then we say, tell it to the next person. And that goes all the way down to the last person. And we say to the last person, here's a piece of paper, write that down. And then we show both pieces of paper, and they are never even close to being the same.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, sorry.
So managing your message and internally is so important.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that in terms of what we would be looking at when we're working on new operations consultancy, would be simplifying what's there already and standardizing it. And they're two very important things, and neither of them two things can be done if the people inside the company don't understand the business. So
absolutely.
Okay, how are we? Everybody okay then with everything? Good.
You made a lot of people go silent there, Nick. Well done. When there's silence in the room.
Story of my life, Vincent.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Nick. I appreciate that.
Everyone's like scratching their heads, going, "Wow, we never thought of that. Many years have I been doing that wrong."
Anyway, thanks very much, Nick, for that.